After my last episode on why adult children are cutting off their parents, a woman left a very compelling comment. She said, "It feels like a part of me died when I had to cut off my mother, but staying in that relationship with her was hurting my kids." And then a few comments later, somebody else wrote something completely opposite. She said, "I told my mom I would only reconnect with her if she got sober. She did, and now we're close again." So there was pain on one side and hope on the other. And that's what I see in many of these estranged relationships between adult children and their parents. Pain on one side, hope on the other. If you're the person who had to walk away from your parents, this episode is for you. But also, if you're the parent that's being cut off, this episode is for you too. I want to start by telling you a story about a boy we'll call Jackson. I met Jackson many years ago. His dad had been mostly absent in Jackson's life because dad was an alcoholic. In fact, Jackson's mom divorced him years earlier because of his alcoholism. And even though Jackson's dad had visitation rights, he rarely kept them. This guy was a complete flake. He was as unreliable as you could get. He never showed up for appointments. He missed birthdays. You know the drill. Well, now it's years later, and I'm meeting Jackson for the first time in therapy following a suicide attempt. And the suicide attempt was serious, and it scared both parents, but it scared dad to death. It was kind of a wake-up call for him. And at one point early on, when I'm meeting with dad, he asked me, what can I possibly do to save my son? And what can I do to save my relationship with my son, which he really didn't have one. This is after years of neglect. And I was blunt. I said, you've got to do two things. Number one, you got to stop drinking. You have to get sober. If you can't do that, nothing else matters. Number two, I just want you to show up in Jackson's life. That's it. You don't have to do anything more than that. You don't have to take him to Disneyland. You don't have to do anything extra special. You just have to be present. Well, to his credit, he did it. He got into recovery, he got sober, and he started showing up. And at first, Jackson didn't want anything to do with him. Jackson was angry, years of anger and bitterness and disappointment and hurt and pain. So of course he was going to feel that way. And of course he was going to reject his dad. And I told this dad, just stay consistent, be steady, be neutral and steady. Do little things, send him text messages, be patient, respect his boundaries. If you invite him to dinner and he rejects you, that's okay. Jackson deserves to be angry at you, and he deserves to feel like he can't trust you. So be consistent, though. Try to show up in small ways. Well, before I tell you what happened next, I want to show you something about your own situation. If you had to cut off a relationship with your parent, you might be asking yourself this question, or maybe you've asked yourself this question many times, probably have many times. Should I give them another chance? And I'm just saying to you that because you're even asking that question, that means you still care. Of course you care. Your parents might demonize you for cutting them off. They might make you out to be a monster. How could you do this to us? We would never do that to you. But the fact that you even think about that means that you care. And I know from reading comments from the last episode, and I know from 30 years of professional experience, person after person will say the same thing. I tried for years. I set boundaries. I begged. Nothing changed. This was my last option. Cutting them off was my last option. I'm just letting you know, I know you're not walking away because you're cruel, because you're a monster, because you're unforgiving, because you can't just get over it. You're walking away because staying in the relationship was destroying you and destroying your family. If you ever wonder if reconciliation is possible, then it does tell me that you still hold some space for hope, even if it does feel hopeless, even if it's painful. So I want to help you think through this decision of reconciliation, because when it is possible, it always follows the same pattern. So I want you to think about this pattern. There are three pillars, and I'm speaking primarily to adult children who are cutting off their parents. But if any of you parents are listening right now, you need to listen to this as much or more than they do, because this is how you can reconnect with them. What I'm about to tell you is the answer to your problem. This is what they need. Okay, so the first pillar would be that your parents stop defending themselves. They just start owning up to any kind of hurt that they've done. If your parents saying, hey, I did my best, and they're defending themselves, well, then that's not good enough. But if they're saying to you, I hurt you, I'm sorry, then they're not defending themselves. And they're not blaming you. They're not blaming your spouse, the therapist, anybody else. They're taking responsibility for themselves. So that's pillar number one. Pillar number two, they respect your boundaries. They honor your limits. They don't punish you when you get silent. They don't give you the guilt treatment. They let you set the pace. There's no pressure. You don't owe them anything. And they show you that they value safety for you more than access to you. Okay, now pillar number three is the work that they do. That work in changing themselves precedes the request for reconciliation. So they actually start seeking help, whether it's in therapy or any other way that they can become accountable. They start changing their routines. They start becoming more reliable. And they're doing this for a while. It's not just a flash effort. It's a new pattern in their lives. Now, if these three pillars are in place, owning what they've done, respecting your boundaries, and doing the work, then reconciliation is not only possible, but it's very likely. It's not easy. It's not quick. There's going to be bumps in the road and there's going to be ups and downs, but it's possible. And here's the truth underneath all of this. And that is that they would value the relationship with you more than being right. That's what makes it safer for you to try. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of times that you need to stay away. If any of these pillars are missing, you might need to protect yourself. So if they're defending themselves, if they're blaming you, blaming your spouse, then you might need to protect yourself. It might even be necessary for your mental health to protect yourself. You don't owe your mental health or your children's safety to a relationship that keeps hurting you. And choosing peace over pain does not make you the bad guy. Here's something else that might help you make sense of why your parent is the way they are. And this is really important. It's important because I think a lot of adult children don't understand this about that generation. And I want to be clear first, I'm not trying to make an excuse for them. This is really just about understanding them so that you can make a clear decision. Most of your parents grew up in a world that did not talk about feelings, and you never cut off your family. You stayed loyal no matter what. That is the mindset of that generation. It was really more about loyalty and duty. If you were hurt, you just pushed it down. So if your parents are telling you, I would never cut off my mother, I would never have done what you're doing to me, they're actually not lying to you about that. They're telling you the truth. They're telling you about the world that they lived in, the world that they grew up in. It was a world where you were not allowed to have feelings. You were not allowed to have boundaries. Children didn't talk back. Respect meant silence. Your parent actually might be terrified right now, and it's because their entire understanding of family is different. They don't know how to be wrong. They were never taught how to be wrong. They were never taught how to apologize. Nobody modeled that for them. In fact, apologizing probably meant opening themselves up to vulnerability that would result in a lot of pain. They grew up believing that admitting fault meant losing power. So when they say to you, I did my best, they're not really trying to hurt you with that. They actually might be drowning in shame, and they don't know how to stay afloat without that kind of a defense. Does that make it okay? No. Does that mean you have to go back? No. But I hope this can help you see them as actually being confused and scared instead of being evil. Some of them might be evil, but most of them are not. And that distinction matters for your own healing. Now let's go back to Jackson. I want to tell you the rest of the story because Jackson's dad did the one thing that most parents don't do. He stuck around. He stayed. He got sober. He didn't get defensive. He didn't say, I did my best. He didn't blame Jackson's mom. He didn't blame a therapist. He showed up. He wrote letters. He started going to all of his visitations, even when Jackson didn't go. He went to every visitation. He went to AA. He kept every single appointment. There were no relapses. There were no broken promises. And he did it for months. Now, there may have been relapses that I'm unaware of, but by and large, he stuck with his program. And then something special happened. And that was that Jackson softened. And it was actually pretty quick. And it's not because dad guilted him or pressured him. It's not because dad gave excuses about his own childhood, which was traumatic, but it's because his dad finally became reliable and accountable and trustworthy. Jackson, of course, was dying for a relationship with his dad. He always wanted a relationship with his dad. He just couldn't trust him. And when that trust started to come back, Jackson's anger started to melt away. Today, those two are very close. And here's what made that possible. Jackson's father went first. He didn't wait for Jackson to forgive him before he changed. He changed first. And then he let the forgiveness part catch up later. And that's what real repair looks like. So if you're an adult child who's walked away, I want you to hear this. You get to decide if and when reconciliation happens, not your parent, not your siblings, not the rest of your family, not your friends. A lot of people are going to be telling you what they think you should be doing. You get to decide this. But if your parent does the work, if they show up, if they own their harm, if you can see that they're trying to change, then you can and probably should really consider letting them back in, even if it's slowly, even if you, of course, you have to have boundaries and you do it on your own terms. But I would encourage you to do this if there is any hope possible. If your parent refuses to change, if they double down on denial, if they keep hurting you, then you can stay away and you probably should stay away. You don't have to feel guilty about that. You don't have to feel shame about that. You're not a bad person because you're actually trying to protect yourself and protect your loved ones. Now, your parent will never understand that. They're probably going to die without understanding that, which is tragic, but it's not your fault. And this is also really important for you parents whose adult children are cutting you off or who won't talk to you. I need you to hear these things. Your child is not walking away because they want to hurt you. They're walking away to survive. And if you want any chance at reconciliation, you need to do what Jackson's dad did. Stop defending yourself. Start listening. If there's anything you can do, start listening. Stop explaining your intentions. Own your impact. Don't wait for your child to come to you. You're their parent. Start proving that you're at least trying to change. And don't make it about your pain. Make it about their safety. This might take years. It might take months. It's going to be uncomfortable. And it will definitely mean that you'll have to admit to things that you've spent a lot of time denying. If you want your child back, you can have your child back, but you have to do these things. And this is the only path to that. They don't owe you loyalty. They don't owe you duty. You need to be consistent, humble, work on changing. And if you can't do that, if it just feels impossible or too much to ask, then you have two choices. You either need to go get help to do this, professional help, or you have to accept that estrangement will continue because your child is not going to come back to a relationship that keeps on hurting them. They are done with that. Most adult children who cut off a parent did not want that relationship to end. They wanted the pain to end. And most parents who feel blindsided by being cut off are not monsters. They're just confused and they're scared and they're grieving and they don't know what to do because they were never taught how to do that. Some families find their way back and some don't. And my hope is that you can find your way back. The families that do all have one thing in common, and that is that someone was willing to go first. Someone was willing to change. Someone was willing to build safety instead of demanding loyalty or instead of being right. If you're a parent, you still have a chance, but it requires you to be brave enough to be wrong. Connection does not come from duty. It comes from safety. If you want to learn more about how to build relationships that last, I have a course called Connection and Credibility, and you'll find that at drtoddtalks.com. If you're not ready for that, I have tons of free YouTube videos, podcast episodes, articles on my website. Again, drtoddtalks.com. I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me your story. I read every one of them. All right, I'll see you next time.